Hello, everybody. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. Clerk, will you please have roll call?
1 presiding, 9 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. I would let everybody know that Commissioners Anderson and Thatcher are excused tonight. Commissioner Sorich, would you please lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Fellow Commissioners, Madam Chair, thank you. Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best citizens. Amen.
Now we'll move on to public comment on any items on tonight's agenda. If there's anybody from the public that would like to comment on any items that are on the agenda, please come to the microphone. Okay. Seeing none, I'll move to the report of the chair. I want to remind the public that the wall that heals, which is a replica of the Vietnam Veterans Wall, is set up and will be set up at Father Sheehan Park 24 hours a day until September 1st. It's a very beautiful traveling memorial to the Vietnam veterans, and I would encourage everybody to go check it out. It's pretty powerful. I would also like to thank Sergeant Kevin Millockney for his 27 years of service. He recently retired this week, and I just wanted to make sure that we gave him a shout out from the council as well and thanked him for his service. Moving on to Section 1, Communications. Item number 1, Communication number 2024-369. Beth Worm, Human Resources Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to take the next step in the implementation of the Communication Management Services LLC, CMS, non-union classification system, specifically by bringing 9 positions up to the identified minimum pay rate for their respective roles, totaling $35,042.80. This communication was moved from the Personnel Committee to the full council, which is why we have it here before us tonight. And I believe Commissioner Morgan had a few good questions, and we have Mr. Cairns from CMS is here and Director Worm. So whomever would like to kick it off, please come on up and kind of maybe give us a high overview of the program and give us some details, and then we'll give an opportunity for everybody to ask questions. So go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jim Cairns. I'm with Communication and Management Services. We're a Montana-based human resources consulting firm. And I'll be speaking to our classification and pay project and salary survey today. I did bring about 10 handouts if anybody wants any. So Madam Chair, I'll just kind of give an overview of the project. Most of you have heard this before, so I appreciate your patience, and then anybody that hasn't heard it before, we'll kind of walk you through what we did and give you a sense of the entire project and kind of what got us to this recommendation we're here with today. So first thing we want to do is I'll go over our salary survey and classification process. We'll talk about the implementation process, which these move to minimums as part of the implementation. Once we get these new wage ranges established, we got to make sure we get people within the wage ranges. Then we're set up for success. We've got the wage ranges that are market-based. We've got jobs properly slotted into the wage ranges based on job content, and that'll be our classification process going forward. I just briefly wanted to remind everybody of our compensation philosophy. And I won't, the Council of Commissioners developed and approved this, so I don't want to read it all to you, but I want to point out a few kind of key things as part of our compensation philosophy. And I know one of Chief Executive Gallagher's objectives with this program is to have a system that's going to be in place that the city county can rely on for years to come We don't want to have a system that's going to be changing every couple of years or a system that's not implemented. So the compensation philosophy kind of states our long-term goal for this process and project. So just to hit a couple highlights is we want appropriate internal pay relationships. So that's, we want to have internal equity. We want to maintain wage rates that reflect the labor market. And the market we looked at was fairly conservative. We looked at other local governments and a few relevant employers in the Butte-Silver area. We want to have a classification and pay system that's responsive, effective, understandable. We talk about benefits. You know, it's not just all about pay, kind of the total rewards. Benefits is part of our compensation philosophy. We have to provide equal pay for equal work. That's a requirement under both state and federal law. And we want to provide a compensation structure and pay practice transparency to the public managers and employees. So, like I said, we were very inclusive in developing this compensation philosophy and in conducting the study. Got some great guidance and feedback from this body as we went through it, and I'll recap some of that today. So does anybody have any questions on the compensation philosophy? Because that's really kind of the long-standing document. That's essentially our mission statement when it comes to compensation, pay, and benefits. Okay, I'll keep moving. When I talk about market, we actually collected actual wages from employers, other governments, and other employers in the Butte-Silver area. So when you hear me refer to the market, basically what I'm talking about is the aggregate or the average rate of all those employers. We surveyed them, we got information from them. What are you paying an accountant? We evaluated the data, made sure we got good information. It was a good match and good data, and then we based our market analysis on that. Generally, we found that the city-county was overall about 10% behind our market findings. Now that varied. We had some positions that were further than that. We had some positions that were, 20%, 25% behind. And we did have a handful of positions that were at or above the market, 100, 105, 107% of the market. So overall, I think we're doing a good job in managing pay. However, we had fallen behind the market a little bit and needed to catch up. So one of the things we're proposing, and I'll talk about today, is a classification system. So classification is just simply ranking jobs based on job content, maybe from a less complex job or a job that requires less qualifications up to a job, an attorney job or something that requires a lot of experience and qualifications. So we ranked all the jobs using the classification system. The wage ranges we're going to show you today are based on the market. We use that market data to establish the wage ranges. And we basically, the classification system, by and large, slots positions into wage ranges that approximate the market rate for their job with consideration of job content, because it's not just a market-based system. Like I said, we want to make sure we're providing equal pay for equal work. So if we have two jobs that have similar levels of responsibility, similar working conditions, similar qualifications, the system will provide that they're paid similarly. What we did to classify jobs is we did, you'll see PAQs, position analysis questionnaires. We sent a survey out to folks. Staff and then supervisors provided us with good information regarding their jobs. We did some follow-up phone calls with folks. Based on that, we did the job classification. Then we reviewed that for equity to make sure that we were achieving our goals, that we were getting jobs in market-based pay ranges, and we did have internal equity. We evaluated all the jobs on these 6 factors you see there: complexity, knowledge, accountability, supervisory authority, working conditions, interpersonal contacts. And those factors were selected because they're present in all jobs, whether it's an animal control officer, HR specialist, accountant, all have those factors. So the system provides that everybody's kind of measured using the same yardstick, and we have a good, reliable factoring and ranking of jobs based on that. The classification system does not necessarily address or consider individual performance. Performance pay may be something we talk about, but that's down the road. It's genuinely based on the content of the job. It's not necessarily based on the volume of work or the value of equipment used. It's more important, what are you doing with that equipment, or what's your scope of authority making financial decisions. And it it doesn't measure education or experience that's not required for the job. So if we have an entry-level accounting tech and they've got a CPA, or we've got a HR specialist with a doctorate, the classification system doesn't recognize that unless it's part of the minimum requirements of the job. So each job based on this classification is going to be placed in a wage range. So you'll see the wage range has a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum. So as we got everybody slotted into one of these grades, we found that some positions, some individuals were actually paid below the minimum of the grade. Now, when we originally did this study, and some of these results, I believe, were in 2021 or 2022, there was a more significant number of employees that were behind or below minimum. But with the adjustments that the commission made, we had the 3, the 4, the 5% adjustments, those folks were brought up above the minimum. So now we have a much shorter list of folks that we still need to get up to the minimum in order to step into this new wage range. Now, once we get everybody in there, everybody that's a grade 8 will be paid at least $20.39 an hour. Our goal then is to progress people's pay. So if you start out in a grade 8 at $20.39 an hour, our goal is for over time for your pay to progress to the $23.98. And the way we're going to progress people's pay is we have a target market ratio system. So this is a sample. You may start out at 85% of the midpoint, $20 an hour, and then each year what we'd like to see happen is the employee's pay or the individual's pay progresses 3% until they hit the midpoint, which approximates market. So the goal there is to have a good entry rate for people and folks coming in, with just the minimum qualifications are hired at entry, and then we want to progress those folks' pay throughout their career up to the midpoint, so that they're seeing wage growth and that we're paying market competitive rate. So one of the things that we may experience now that we've moved everybody up to entry is we may have some pay compression. We may have somebody that just got bumped up to the entry at $20 an hour. We've got a long-term employee that's been here for 5, 6, 8, 9 years. That's at $21 an hour. We're going to have some pay compression there. So I'll talk a little bit about our plan to address pay compression as well as getting everybody into these new wage ranges. So just to recap, all the positions are factored and assigned to a grade. Placement of employees within that wage range then associated with the grade is based on their target market ratio or their target percent of midpoint. And then our recommendation is that the city county pay people as close to their target market ratio as we can. Now that means, and what that does is leave full budgetary control in the hands of the Council of Commissioners, because we can say, I'd like Jim to be paid at 95% of midpoint, but how close we get me to that pay rate is going to depend on how much funding is available each year. So once everybody's paid at least the minimum, we're in compliance with our own pay ranges, and then we can calculate each year, here's what everybody's target market ratio should be, here's the difference between their current pay and where we'd like them to be paid, and then move people as close to that rate as possible each year. But if we have a lean year and the Council of Commissioners is unable to approve any money for wage increases, we still maintain those target market ratios, and then in further cycles when the money becomes available, then we do progress pay as close to that target market ratio as we can. So this may differ. Some of you may have seen step systems where we say, year 1 you're going to make $15 an hour, year 2 it's $17 an hour, year 3 $19. This is not a system that commits the commission to paying a certain hourly rate at each year of service. What this says is we have targets for people, and we're going to move people as close to that target as we can within available funding. So one of the beauties of this system is it does allow you as the Council of Commissioners to retain, full control over that budget and decide how much we can fund to move people towards that midpoint and to, alleviate that pay compression and to keep people growing and moving in their jobs. We did have some, when we initially presented this to the council, we had a few concerns that Council of Commission members made. We wanted there to be, the commission said we want more communication. We want to make sure that the classification factoring is right. We want more face time with supervisors and employees. So at the Council of Commissioners' direction, we worked with the Chief Executive and HR Director to circle back and really kind of get some more face time with department directors, make sure we had their buy-in, their understanding, that folks felt that they had a say in the process and that the classifications were equitable, excuse me. So we've done that, and we feel like we've kind of got that additional communication, got that additional face time, and very comfortable with the results where they're at right now. And of course, the whole issue of ensuring the budget and finance office know the overall cost. And we did spend some time with the finance director at the time and the HR director doing some training on the classification system, our calculation spreadsheets. We wanted to make sure that the city county is fully prepared to administer and maintain this system. So just a quick recap of some of the communication to date. You know, we did an executive memo about classifications. We did the questionnaires. We did the follow-up with folks. We've provided a couple updates to this commission and the personnel committee. We did meet to develop the next steps with human resources. We've got a preliminary approval from the Council of Commissioners. And then we did follow up with department heads and had some one-on-one meetings with folks as well. So feel really good about the process. And like I said, we did do some training for finance and budget on the system and the finance there. I don't want to spend much time on performance-based pay because we're not proposing that right now, but it was a question that commissioners had down the road. Is that something we want to look at? And certainly is something that the city county can look at. But in order to look at performance-based pay, we first have to have a valid, reliable, and trusted performance appraisal system. So to get into that performance-based pay, the city county would have to look at making sure we're doing a good job evaluating individual performance. We got good data to rely on for that. So in the interim, we're really going to recommend that we focus on years of service or years of experience, because that is an objective measure. And you know, certainly the system would support a transition to a pay-for-performance plan if that is something that the city county is interested in down the road. So kind of our next steps here that we're looking at is we got to implement the new wage ranges. So like the proposal that's before you tonight, we do have a handful of folks that we have to get up to that minimum rate to step into these new wage ranges. We're going to have to maintain the classification system. So we've done some preliminary classifications of the jobs in the city county, but we're going to have jobs that are changing duties or new positions that come up. So we've set this system up so your HR director and chief executive can make informed and intelligent decisions about, you know, what grade should a new position be, or if this job had new duties added or became a supervisor, you know, it was a grade 13, should it go up to a 14 or a 15? This system will support those decisions, and we'll have to maintain the classifications. We're also going to have to maintain the wage ranges. You know, we established these wage ranges about a year ago, and they're already getting a little stale. You know, the market and wage growth continues to move on. It's not going as quickly as it was when we were in the midst of the study. But since 2018, in the southwest region of Montana, we've seen a 35% growth in wages just over the past 5 years. So. And I'm sure you've all recognized that in the community and you know, trying to do that. So a lot of employers are scrambling to keep up with the market. And frankly, the cost of not keeping up with the market is you're going to have increased turnover. We're going to be training people. We're going to be, you know, continually recruiting, having a revolving door. You know, so it's really been our experience that you're going to spend the money one way or the other. We either provide competitive salary and benefits and keep people, or we're going to have turnover and just be a training ground for other employers if we're not providing competitive pay. So it's definitely a worthwhile investment. You've got some great employees. You know, I think another major consideration with this pay plan is we, going back to the compensation philosophy, said we want to have, you know, equity within the city county. So I think making sure that we're thinking about our non-union staff and thinking about keeping them on par, keeping them on pace with the staff that are engaged in collective bargaining, so that we don't get a huge disparity between our union folks and our non-union folks. And this system will help support making continued good decisions about progressing pay and supporting our non-union staff. And Then the other thing we got to do, like I said, is progress employees toward that midpoint. And again, there's not a fixed dollar amount associated with that. It's as funding's available and as we can afford to do that, we want to keep people progressing towards those midpoints. So a couple budget considerations, and really all that's in front of us tonight is getting those handful of folks up to the midpoint, or to the minimum, I'm sorry. But in the long term, this wage matrix that we've established, we're going to recommend that you periodically adjust that wage matrix to keep pace with inflation and keep pace with wage growth. Maybe not necessarily a cost of living allowance, but often when you do implement those enterprise wage adjustments, everybody gets 2% and we move the whole wage matrix up 2%. That's what it's going to take to keep our wage matrix up to speed and keep it whole with inflation and with wage growth. Then, like I said before, we're going to have each year maybe some promotions, people going from administrative assistant 1 to an administrative assistant 2. We're going to have jobs that are reclassified due to changes in duties or additional duties, and we're going to have new positions. And then the other thing that I strongly recommend that you folks consider in budget for is to continue to progress employees to their target market wage. Couple reasons that's going to eliminate the wage compression that I talked about earlier and start to spread folks out a little bit so that the folks that have more experience and are contributing more due to their greater experience are realizing a higher rate of pay. And then if somebody's really close, my pay is, as a new employee, is only 50 cents less than somebody that's been here for 5 years. I may already be at my target market ratio, so I may not get a big adjustment, but that person that's been here for a while and whose pay is compressed with mine will get a larger adjustment. So under that target market ratio system, people aren't always going to get the same adjustment. They may, if I'm at my target, I may get little or nothing, and if somebody's way below their target, they may get a larger increase. So some of the strategies we recommend is to maintain market-based wage ranges, which we have now, but to keep them up to pace with the market, we're periodically continue to evaluate jobs based on job content and responsibilities. Individual pay positioning, that's figuring out where people should be paid within their range based on their experience or years of service with the city, county. And then budget considerations, like I said, everything aside from the move to minimum is totally contingent on how much money we allocate for those adjustments. So if we have $40,000 in a year to do it, we'll get by and move everybody as close to their target as we can within that. Or if we have $150,000 in a good year and can get everybody to their target, that would be ideal. And then strategic wage allocation, I think it's important for us to understand that the focus is going to be on positions and individuals that are significantly below market rates. We will gradually bring all employees' wages in line with market expectations. So again, I want to emphasize the wage increases aren't guaranteed and are contingent on the finances, council approval, and market positions. So there's no entitlements or guarantees with this system. The market and all those other things have to tell us it's necessary. So just wanted to open it up if anybody had any questions or concerns with the system, and hopefully I was able to explain why we need to make these adjustments for these folks that are in front of you tonight to get them up to minimum.
Thank you, Mr. Cairns. It's always great. Even though it's repetitive for me, it's really great to hear, and you guys have done a lot of work. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chairwoman Shea. Thanks, Mr. Cairns, for coming today. This presentation was exactly what I was hoping for, just to get an overview of what the plan was moving forward. I do have a couple of questions, though. You indicated, so when I was looking at a presentation that you did back in April, I wasn't here, it showed that there was 43 employees that were below the minimum, but you indicated that through increased COLA increases over the last couple of years, that number has gone from 43 to 9, basically, from tonight. Is that kind of the best way to assess that? Okay.
Yeah, Chair Shea, Commissioner Morgan, that's exactly right. So, some of those folks weren't way below minimum. So those cost of living adjustments that the city county did brought those people up above the minimum. So that's why that number went down. And I think probably the folks that we're seeing on the list right now would be folks that were probably more than, maybe more than 9% below the minimum back in that list. So everybody else kind of the COLAs got us there. And then, yeah, the remaining folks are the ones where we didn't get there with the COLAs, so we still have a little bit ways to go.
Thank you, Mr. Cairns. Follow-up? Follow-up, Commissioner Morgan.
And then the other question, so you mentioned in there that the Butte-Silver government incumbent wages were approximately 90% of the market. Two questions. How often do you see a municipality at 90% of market would be one question. And the second question would be, is when you do the salary studies, does it take into account benefits, or is it strictly just hourly wage?
Great.
Go ahead, Mr. Cairns.
Chair Shea, Commissioner Morgan, thank you. That's an excellent question. It's pretty typical to see municipalities and local governments lagging the market like that. And really, lately, we've even seen jurisdictions falling further behind more than 90% of the market. And keep in mind that, we've got folks ranging from 70% of the market to 120% of the market. So that 90% is an overall average. But really, a lot of jurisdictions have been just struggling to keep up with the wage growth. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest factors we've seen, and one of the biggest challenges in public sector employment is, frankly, public sector employers used to get away with hiring people way lower than the market, starting way below, and maybe you didn't get to the market until you've been there 10 or 12 years, but the benefits were great. And so that offset it. So people are willing to come. And what we're seeing in the market now with today's workforce is they're expecting to come in closer to the market, and they're expecting to get to the market sooner. And if we can't provide that, people are moving on. So a lot of jurisdictions have been really struggling. We've been doing a lot of these studies. Recently completed one at the city of Whitefish, and I mean their city manager can't afford to live in the city. They're struggling so hard to keep up with wage growth and housing costs and those types of things. So it's pretty typical where we see you falling. And one other asterisk I want to say with the market is, we weren't surveying large, major public sector corporations. I mean, the market as we defined it were a lot of other jurisdictions, and so, again, I'd say it's kind of a conservative look of the market. We looked at Anaconda, Deer Lodge, Billings, Helena, Kalispell, Beaverhead, Cascade. Some of those jurisdictions like Cascade are still really struggling and paying some low wages. Yeah, and we looked regionally. I mean, we looked at Idaho, Montana, Wyoming to kind of see what they're doing. So we had a pretty broad net thrown, but you're in a pretty typical position, I think, with regard to other jurisdictions. And then as far as the survey, it did focus strictly on wages. So we weren't thinking about, the health insurance. Most of the participants we surveyed were, public sector employers, so they're going to have the same retirement, they're going to have the same leave. But the health insurance is a huge variable. If I look at different cities, counties in Montana, many of which are with MMIA, some of which are self-funded. That is a big benefit variable, but a lot of the other benefits do look pretty similar from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So I'd say with the exception of, health insurance and a couple other perks, most of our competitors or respondents would have comparable benefit packages.
Thank you, Mr. Cairns.
Just
one more follow-up? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess as I walked into this meeting, I was thinking that this was a pay philosophy that would be adopted by the council, because in the past, the previous salary studies we've done, we've had to accept the raises to go into effect over multiple years. But after hearing that presentation, it seems to me that this is more of a chief executive tool and the HR director's tool that they would use to utilize to bring the employees up to market, and then they would maintain based on that. But the checks and balance portion of it is you would be coming back to the council to approve the budget increase for those salary increases. Am I understanding that correctly?
Go ahead, Mr. Chief
Yeah,
Executive.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Morgan, that's somewhat correct. But we're going to create a committee that will review and recommend what those increases could be, and so we could make a recommendation of what a COLA would be. We have no intent that somebody will just stay flat, right? But there'll be a COLA that increase for all employees, but the variable will be how we get people to the midpoint of market. This year, the strategy was to get to minimum, for everybody to start this paying matrix the way that we see this in this pay plan moving forward, so it becomes an implemented structure that we can work from. And actually, there's a 5-year implementation that Director Gleason said we need a 5-year projection to see what that would look like just to get to midpoint. That gives us some guiding points, but it doesn't give direction. So if we have a bad tax year, we have industry that leaves, the mine shuts down, we're not obligated to say next year everybody's getting this, or there's going to be a step for everybody. It gives us the ability to modify, but always with the intent to keep everybody above minimum. That's the guiding line.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Kearns, for coming tonight. You know, I'm all about paying people what they're worth and finding good people, and if you don't pay them decent, somebody else will. So I'm all about that. So my question is there going to be enough people in the government, in the Butte-Silver HR department to maintain this, or eventually you're going to have to see it hiring more people? Or what is there, 3 in the department now? Is that going to be enough currently to maintain the system?
Thank you, Mr. Sorich. Director Worm.
Hi, thank you, Commissioner Commissioner Sorich. We have every intention of doing it with the staff that we currently have. I say that with, the hopes and dreams to always grow the department. I think we can always use more people, especially if we're looking towards to ever developing, pay for performance. I think that is a workload to take on too. So, these types of things you think about with this, but I think right now we are ready to move forward with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Worm. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've been following this all throughout the process and all that, and one thing that really surprised me was a person working for Butte-Silver was making $13.73 an hour. And over the history and all that, this process did work due to the Fox loss, and I'm sure you're familiar with that study and all that. That was implemented by Butte-Silver that basically went to hell when the chief executives turned over and all that. So this process here is bringing these people, and you talked about the initial wage. So we have a gentleman making $13.73 or an employee, and you start removing their health insurance. You start moving their retirement and the things that they have to deal with just to keep afloat. And if you do the math on that, it's pretty minimal. So what happened with that Fox Lawson and all that, it was set up and all that, and then due to the maintenance procedure, which at one time I believe Commissioner Shea was here, was 5%. But everybody did that, and then it was agreed upon that would be the scenario. But since then, the union side has been getting the increases and all that, and these people have basically been, wouldn't like the word used neglected, but have not been brought up to where they need to be. And there's very few of them that, are there, 9 of them. But it's important to these people around this table, as Commissioner Sorich said, that we pay our people, and we want them to stay, and we want them to be proud to come to work in the morning and make a good living. So I think it's important that we just put out, I looked at your graph, it says sample, but I didn't see $13.73 in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, in all reality, Butte-Silver Bowl is probably one of the best scenarios of county employment for the wages that they do pay. So we want to keep that up and be fair to everybody. So I really appreciate the work that you've done and my fellow members of the council have done to make this implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reardon. Mr. Cairns?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Reardon, thank you for that, and you're spot on. I mean, and that's so important that we get this system stood up, and the compensation philosophy that I previewed with you this evening, along with the committee that Chief Executive Gallagher spoke to, I think are a couple things that are different this time around that are going to help us, kind of memorialize and cement this system. And we talked about, former Finance Director Gleason talking about the 5-year plan. So we want to make sure this system stays in place and is here for more than 5 years. And we don't want this system to change when chief executives change or when commission members change. We want to have a long-term plan so that we're sure that we're properly compensating our employees. And like I said, it's going to be good for employees, but I also firmly believe it's good for the citizenry to have good, experienced, motivated staff that we're able to retain. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Cairns. Commissioner O'Neill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question maybe for Chief Executive, but thank you for the presentation, by the way. The committee, you said you'd have a committee what does that consist of? Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank
Chief
you, Madam
Executive.
Chair, Commissioner O'Neill. So that would, we would put 2 council members on that, so the council's representative in there, and then we would probably have the budget director and other directors in there. So there's representation from all sectors that have non-union employees in there, and so that they can be a part of that. Of course, the chief executive staff, the executive staff would be a part of that as well. So I see this as being about a 5-member committee so that we're able to look at upcoming budget. We can project what the numbers are going to be coming in as far as tax dollars coming in, where we're at, what we look that we can afford to in those wage increases, because that's one of the challenges of creating a budget, right, is projecting out what wage increases, especially with unions that we haven't settled contracts with. We would know the number, what we would have with the non-union, and our non-union is about 115 employees, I believe, 115, 116. So all of our other 500 plus employees are union. So trying to establish a budget based on what we're projecting those out. But this would give us a solid number as we're looking forward with those union employees and know exactly what we can afford.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Chairwoman Shea. The only comment that I would add to with Commissioner Reardon's is I can tell you that from a previous life I had in working in Butte-Silver Bow, probably was a daily event that somebody would come in and non-union would say, I deserve a raise. And my response was, I don't have anything to compare it to. And so I can tell you how important having this plan in front of the HR department, HR director, to be able to look at something and show somebody how their salary is, how it came to be, what they can expect over several years is going to be invaluable. And I appreciate the administration actually going through and doing this, because it's going to have a huge impact in staff at Butte-Silver Bow, I feel. It was something that needed to be there. It'll benefit a lot of people in the sense of they'll know where they stand. And before it was like, I have no idea how you got what you got kind of thing. So very appreciative of that. I'm a little hesitant on approving the communication as is just because of the way it's written, and it goes back to what I had mentioned earlier, that I don't feel this is a policy that the Council of Commissioners has to adopt. And Chief Executive Gallagher, you can instruct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we'd be looking for a motion to approve the communication to bring the 9 individuals up to minimum is really what the intent of this communication was for.
Mr. Chief Executive.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Morgan, that would be correct. And so the interpretation, I agree, the language was a little bit confusing, and that is a little bit of a miss by mine as HR Director Worm and I kind of communicated on this as we sent in the communication. But yeah, it would be to ask to bring those 9 forward as indicated in the communication.
Commissioner Morgan.
So with that being said, I would make a motion that we approve communication 2024-369 and bring the 9 positions that are identified to their minimum pay rates and place this communication on file.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to concur with the communication to bring the 9 positions up to minimum. Is there anything on the question? Okay, commissioners, will you please vote and place this communication on file? All right, would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Cairns, for being here tonight. Thank you, Director Worm, for your hard work. I think this is a really great thing it's a good foot forward, let's put it that way. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, item number 2, communication number 2024-392. Mike Clegg, Deputy County Attorney, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to have Chief Executive Gallagher sign the contract with Addictions Consulting Group for services provided to the Butte-Silver DUI Court. I believe Commissioner Fisher had some questions regarding this communication last week, so I would turn the floor over to him.
Thank you, Chairman Shea. I have spoke to Deputy County Attorney Mike Clegg earlier this evening. He answered my question. My question was, why not go with a local firm instead of a Billings firm? He explained that to me very well, and it has to do with oversight of like CCS and things like that. And if anyone has any questions, I'm sure Mr. Clegg is willing to answer them. And so I would make a motion at this time to concur and place on file with communication 2024-392. Thank you.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor to concur and place on file communication number 2024-392. Is there anything on the question? Will everybody please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Okay, moving on to item number 3, communication number 2024-393. Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for September 11th, 2024 for the screw presses for Metro's wastewater treatment plant. This communication actually had an error in the date. That bid opening will be held on September 25th, so September 25th, so please note that, and we will continue to hold this until the 25th. Item number 4, communication number 2024-394. Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for September 18th, 2024 for the West Side Storm Reroute Project. We will also continue to hold this until that date. Item number 5, communication number 2024-395. Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget Manager, requesting the Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a presentation on September 25th, 2024 for Director Mark Neary to update the Council on the effluent reuse project. This had an amendment applied to it last week to change the date, which was an error. So we will withdraw that amendment. This presentation will be held on September 4th, and the next agendas will reflect that correct date. Item number 6, communication number 2024-400. John Sullivan, Government Buildings Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for September 11th, 2024 for the Motherlode Fire Suppression System. And we will hold this communication until the 11th. That's the end of the communication. So next is public comment on any public matter not on tonight's agenda. So if there's anybody that would like to comment, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Trudy Healy. I live at 111 West Iron Street. I have a picture here, and if anybody wants to get a closer look at it, I'll leave it. I got a message. It says, couldn't figure out why Metro Sewer only put in 2 to 3 blocks of storm sewer when we reconstruct only 2 to 3 blocks of Lafayette Street. Then I see who lives where the water runs. Any names look familiar. And I'm not going to say the name out loud, so that's why I'm going to leave it here. Our Butte version of government played out again this week as our Council of Commissioners adopted the next year's budget. Like most weeks, that was taken up under emergency suspension of the rules. Those rules are in place to ensure public observation and participation. These emergency situations occur far more often than not, which is an indicator our local government is in crisis. The people should be asking themselves if they're getting what they pay for out of their tax dollars. We can't tell usually because there's sparse minutes of the committee meetings and government spending for various departments is hidden from view. We can rest assured they're spending plenty of money, but who is the beneficiary? The department head who had a nice storm sewer installed this week, only on their side of the street, and new paving coming next week. They're happy. The friends and family members of another who had their dirt road paved are happy. Those of us who live in Central Butte who can't walk down sidewalks because of junk piled up and can't use the street because we'll disappear into a pothole aren't too happy. Butte deserves better from our government, and we demand transparency. Commissioners are supposed to be a check on the out-of-control executive branch, but the body is failing to be anything more than a rubber stamp. They're complicit by allowing the nonstop emergency to grow into a crisis. Never vote for an emergency that isn't truly an emergency, because it's either to hide something or covering incompetence when there's no justification for the request. Vote for change and enjoy the emergency tax increase we all just got.
Thank you, Trudy. Is there anybody else that would have any? Commissioner O'Neill, please. Is there anybody else that would like to comment? Sir, please come and state your name and address for the record. Thank you, Caitlin.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, there we go. Thank you.
I lost some paperwork and files up here. It's been a tragedy for me. But these files were here, Butte-Silver County held them in good faith. They've been unfindable to me. Me and JP looked for them. And they were very important records. There was a lot of important information in them. And, I guess about 3.5 years ago or something, the MIS director died, and he was a very important part of this. The county had managed or helped manage some property that I had in this town and other places. They did it very well, but it went on for too long. And that was over 10 years of that. I'd left money on the table and, for repairs or whatever they were doing. They were already managing a lot of property because the economy was bad and everything was empty, and they just kept doing it. It was just a natural thing for them. Well, they had it to where they were actually starting to make a profit, and I was I was laying in bed half dead. I couldn't even stand up. Now I know that was probably poison. But an underwriter came to the house and asked me a bunch of questions, and I mistakenly had the tax deeds sent to the properties of the addresses instead of to one location. That was a big mistake. So I come today. This should have been, they were making money on this, preserving the money that I had left with these properties enough to where, like I said, I told them to go ahead and pave some roads that would hit $1 million. Anyway, this all got out of hand, and I really got targeted, and then COVID hit, and then it's something all the time. And anyway, so I'm just coming here today to speak out. Maybe if somebody listening might have some information. There's a lot of really, really deep information in here. It's really terrible that it's gone. If somebody knows where it might have went or how it went down, I'd really appreciate it. I wouldn't give you my phone number on here because it's been tapped for years. People selectively answered by whoever. I guess it might be let up now. The police said that it was working again. But all I have is my address. So if somebody knows anything about this, 911 Nevada, that's all we have. You might have to mail something, stop by. I would appreciate it a lot. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Any other members of the public that would like to make any public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I would call your attention to the schedule of meetings on the back, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Somebody please second that. All right, we have a motion to second to adjourn. Would everybody please say aye? Aye.